Single motherhood has been a rising phenomenon in America. Over the recent decades, single parent families have become more prominent than traditional two parent households. Statistically, single mothers head 81% of single parent families. Focus that number for some demographics, and the number is even more staggering. Since the 60s, more than 70% of all black children are born to unmarried moms, an increase 3 times as high during that time. People often equate minority moms as lazy or only wanting to live off the government. I visited Dr. Merlene Petrie and received her take on single parenthood, the history of it, and how it's affected our millennials today.
Well, it has impacted a great deal because in single parenthood, for the most part, the female is the breadwinner. And of course, you know, there has always been discrimination against the female, and if you're black, is even more. So therefore, a single parent who does not have a good job and have children, then those children are impacted by that because the child does not have the necessary resources when they go to school. As a result of that, they can't get a good job when they go out to in the community, particularly during the era of segregation. And even now, you cannot get the better housing facilities. So therefore, what happens is that you get a vicious cycle created because the child did not have the resources. By the time they're teenagers, they have another child. So you have a vicious cycle that's created, a vicious cycle of poverty. One of the cruelest aspects of slavery was the separation of a child from their mother. But what you have to also keep in mind is that for the black female during slavery, she had no gender as far as the white men was concerned. That is, she did all the work, the same work as that of the men, but then she became sexual when he had sexual desire for her. And so therefore, you would also find that during slavery, there was some encouragement on their part. Coming out of slavery, for the most part, the white slave masters did not want blacks on the same plane, and therefore what happened is that shortly after slavery, black people, the masses of them, were put into a second form of slavery, and that was sharecropping. Yeah, and of course, if you know anything about sharecropping, you know that the slaves emerged out of slavery with nothing, and most of them were tied to the land. So if you're going to have a crop, you need the seed, you need money to take care of. So what happened was that he borrowed money from the planter, but by the time he harvested the crop, he owed more than he loaned. And so again, you have this vicious cycle that's created, and many times men went away to try to make it on their own, and that also led to what some people would call a separation of the family.
The Great Migration was seen as a fresh start to former sharecroppers from the South. By 1919, close to 1 million African Americans had left the South in search of work. Along with competition for jobs, housing was scarce as well, and although not legalized, segregation did occur in inner cities.
Been looking at that also and said that industrialization had an impact upon them because while they were sharecroppers doing Reconstruction, when they moved to the city was hustle and bustle, and so they did not have an extended family. They were trapped in what we call the ghetto.
The ghetto became a breeding ground for crime, drugs, and high arrest rates by authorities. President Nixon declared a national war on drug abuse greatly affecting urban communities.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
Former presidents followed suit, introducing new crime bills and mandatory minimums.
My name is Terrence Sweeney. So my mom, she was very strong, independent black woman growing up. She ended up having me so young, but fortunately enough, she had her mom, which was my grandmother, to kind of take care of us while she goes out to try to go to school, while she goes to work, and when she would come home. Growing up, I was the oldest child of my mom's kids out of 4. She had me when she was 17 years old. During this time of her pregnancy, my father, who was the exact same years of age as her, 17, ends up going to prison, 35 to life. So my mom basically raised me as a single parent. Good thing about my mom was she always wanted me to keep a close contact with him, so I would write him in letters, and we would also take trips to the prison to go visit him. But most of the times when I would visit him, it would be a big glass separating us, so I couldn't physically touch him. I would just have to speak through the glass. And one funny story, when I was a kid, I guess my mom took me, I was like maybe a toddler at the time, and I seen him, I'm happy and all, and then I go to try to grab, and I'm like touching the glass, and I'm like, well, I can't like physically touch him, you know? So I guess that was instilled in me. But my mom was very important because I would look at her, the way that she raised me is kind of how I'm raising my daughter now, giving her a bit of free will, but also setting certain rules to abide by, but letting her be the person that she wants to be in life. From the moment I found out I was expecting a child, I changed as a man even still. Like, I was already doing good, but figuring out I'm about to bring a life into this world, my whole life changed. So I figured I want to do whatever I can to make sure my daughter don't have to grow up the way I did, even though the way I did wasn't necessarily very bad. I just wanted to provide for her whatever she need, whatever she want, times 10.
The conversation with Terrence showed me that his mom was more resilient than imagined. Having someone you love taken away could have a lifetime impact. After our interview, Terrence agreed to interview his mom on her time as a single parent.
Knowing that I had somebody that was dependent on me, somebody that I knew was gonna love me unconditionally. I was young, I just did what I could do. Be there for my child as both mother and father. I mean, it was hard, you know, him going to jail, and I was 17 years old, it was hard, but, you know.
And she would always tell me, you know, you gotta go to college, you know, get you a nice job or whatever. At first I wasn't hearing that. I was like, I'm not going to college, I'm not doing that. Yeah, I'm gonna get straight into this music, I'm gonna do this. But she led me to always have a backup plan or get numerous streams of income.
I wanted to let him know that working hard could get you the same things in life that other people have, instead of turning to stealing and, you know, street hustling. You could go to school, get a good education, and you can make the same money that they making and don't have to watch your back all the time.
A lot of people that do go around thinking it's their fault, they end up making wrong decisions, and it starts that cycle all over again. Like, for instance, I have a few friends, a few family members, grew up in single-parent households. They figure it was all their fault. They get into it with their moms and things, and now they go down the wrong path. So either it's incarceration or a casket. So I think if you take a bad situation, make the best out of it. Don't put nobody at fault. The universe works the way it works. You know, we all go through things. Make the best of it. You'll have a happy outcome.
My final trip takes me back home to Wilson, North Carolina, to interview my mom and what she did to make an impact on my life.
Raising a son, especially in the South, was not easy. For me, one of the biggest things I always wanted him to know was to have honesty and loyalty. And I wanted to teach him at an early age financial independence, financial security. So you have to start out like you can hold out. I wanted him to always be able to hold his own. I probably could have done a little better with teaching him how to cook, but he pulled it out.
Growing up in a single parent family for myself was interesting. I'm my mother's only child, so growing up I had to learn a lot.
I worked and I continue to work a swing shift. So by me working a swing shift, I actually rotate. Every 7 days I'm working 7 straight days or 6 straight days. So my biggest fear was actually losing him to the street. And I have always said that no one would ever have a larger influence on my child than I would. So I knew immediately that I had to start making preparations for us to move out of that neighborhood. I wanted him to be around all aspects of people, all individuals. I just made sure that all the people around him were headed in the same direction. I never wanted him to question who he was as a person, and I never wanted him to question his character. I never wanted him to be around people that made him seem that who he was not good enough. The people who are the most important right now, who would have to be your grandparents, my parents. My parents are awesome. I don't know where I would be now without my parents. I don't know where you would be now without my parents. I'm sorry. Football was my savior. The fact that he wanted to be participating in a sport, but I also made him realize that the sport was second nature. Your education was first. Your attitude was first. The way you came about to people was first.
So sports to me came as a way to relieve stress, and it became a way for me to get out anger. And lastly, it was a way for me to be around my friends. Being the only child, I love my friends and I love people who are genuine to me, and I reciprocate that. So playing sports was a way for me to get closer to my friends, and it evolved into something that I actually became good at.
So I can remember Reese was a two-sport player. He played baseball and he also played football at a very young age. And I got a bad report from the teacher about his attitude. So as well as he was doing on a baseball field, then you have to also take that into your everyday life. So the first thing I did was immediately took him off of the baseball team.
I hated that. I was so angry. I was so mad. I didn't want to talk to my mom. I didn't want to look at her. I didn't even want to eat because she bought me the food. But as I got older and as the days went by, I understood that was something that I did, and that was something I had to fix in order to get what I wanted.
Now, it was not a popular decision, but it was a decision that had to be made, because if I did not instill in him early that your attitude will dictate where you go and who you are and the connections that you make, then me as a parent, I would have been failing him. One of the happiest things and one of the saddest things was having a Black child. Because having a male child, you have to give them guidelines and rules that you don't have to do with any other genre, with any other race, with any other person other than a male child of the Black race. And you have to give them instructions.
My situation was similar to many, but it wasn't a situation that was desired by many, if that makes sense. My mother was hard, not hard in a bad way, but she was very tough. She was stern and she was firm in how she raised me, because she knew that she was raising a male, not only raising a male, but a Black male in America. And that comes with just a lot in itself.
See the police, this is what I need you to do. When you have authority figures, this is because a lot of times just their presence is misconstrued as a negativity. The way society is set up, I had to let him know that if you and one of your friends did the exact same thing, your consequences could be severely worse just because of who you are in society. Not because of who you could be in society, but because who you are already perceived to be, right now. I
think as men, we have to make the more conscious decision to stay out of jail and to not take the easier route of making money in life. The second thing I think we have to do is understand that our children are more important than ourselves. We are raising the next wave. We're raising the next generation of people who will inhabit this earth. And if we don't raise them with a sense of togetherness and with a sense of independence and dependence, a balance, we will raise either people who are too independent, don't understand family, or people who are so dependent that they won't be able to live their own lives without someone else helping them.
And so we as single mothers and we as single Black mothers, and especially we as a Black community, we have to uplift our males and let them know that they are not what they see on Love and Hip Hop. They are not what they portray on reality TV. That, you literally come from kings and queens, and that's how you should portray yourself. Don't let anybody rock your crown.